delighted. Leo and I have been friends for nearly 20 years. It's not everyone who gets the honour to come in and elect a Taoiseach, so I'm delighted to have that opportunity. It's a very humbling opportunity, like the last time I got to elect a Taoiseach. I think this was a great day for Leo, a great day for our party, of course, but more importantly, it's the continuation of a government that I think has been very good for our country in very difficult times, but has many big challenges to face, and I'm very happy that Leo's the man leading the way this going forward. I think it has, but unfortunately that success hasn't been across all areas. I think considering we faced into a really difficult global pandemic, that we're dealing with the impact of a vicious war in Ukraine, we've managed those challenges spectacularly well. And that's not me saying it, that's the global viewpoint, particularly our response to the pandemic. But there remains really stark challenges, particularly when it comes to housing, addressing the issues in relation to homelessness and the lack of home ownership. And I think the next 2 years we have to use the success in terms of the management of the economy, in terms of the support of the economy, to drive that development of new housing, as well as addressing other issues, be it climate change or the health system. Well, I think everyone has to admit that there's a massive challenge remaining in houses. Now, there's lots of outside factors that's impacted that. We had to shut the building sites for a considerable amount of time due to COVID. Materials are scarce, energy prices are going up. But I think we have an opportunity, and most importantly, we have an economy and an economic model that will allow us to really supercharge those efforts. And we're starting to see Housing for All this year starting to make an impact. But I fully acknowledge that impact needs to be greater, and it needs to happen quicker for far too many people. Absolutely not. Our party won't be going into government with Sinn Féin. We are very, very different parties, as the now Taoiseach called it. You don't mix oil and water. However, I do very much hope that we can continue our partnership with Fianna Fáil, the Greens and like-minded independents.
Is that you calling for a vote-sharing agreement between the government parties going into the next election?
Well, I think this has been a good government, and it will make absolute sense for all of us to work collectively to return this government after the next general election. I think it's not in the interest just of our parties, but it's in the country's interest to continue with this government. I wouldn't want to be so final about things like that. We have 2 years of government ahead of us, huge job of work to do, and then we'll face the next general election, whenever it may come, in a strong position to appeal to all demographics, younger people, more middle-aged like myself, the older generation from all parts of the country. And I very much expect that Leo Varadkar will return a very strong Fine Gael result in the next general election, and I look forward to being one of his candidates in that election. Well, I think all of us had our first experience as TDs in this Dáil dominated by the pandemic, and how we managed the response to the pandemic, supporting communities, supporting businesses, but crucially maintaining good public health guidance. And I think that was a challenge for everyone, regardless of their government opposition or otherwise. But when I sought election to the Dáil, I made it quite clear that Brexit was a big issue that I'd worked on as a senator, and I wanted to continue to do that. We now have to implement that deal that was secured, but very much on a local issue. Housing remains a massive concern, but for my constituency, the issue of childcare and the cost and availability of childcare has been huge, and that's why I'm so glad that next month the vast majority of people in my constituency who have children in childcare are going to see their bills go down by 25%, but equally all the brilliant people working in early years care are going to see a pay increase and a minimum wage that respects the level of effort and qualification they have. The notion of federal Europe in itself is kind of outdated. Everyone thinks of the United States of Europe like a USA. However, I would very much like to see the European Union working more closely. And the pandemic has shown that there are issues that the European Union doesn't work together on. So I think if we move towards a health union and greater health confidence, if we move in the future of Europe to seeing a Europe that works closer on foreign policy, so we can agree sanctions against Russia, for example, much quicker, that would be something that I'd like to see. I think absolutely Ireland over the Brexit years has taken a much greater leading role within the EU. I think that will continue, and I'm very grateful that we had a pro-European Taoiseach in Micheál Martin being replaced by an even more pro-European Taoiseach in Leo Varadkar. I think there's a lot of problems here. One thing that was committed in the last government was looking at rolling out votes at 16 for local and European elections, because that didn't require a constitutional change. But I will continue within my party to convince others of the merits of votes at 16. I think one thing for me that's so important is that voting is a habit. And once you vote once, you're always likely to continue voting. If we can get people in the formalised education sector, the secondary school sectors, to get used to registering to vote, to voting, maybe when they're in TY or 5th or 6th year, then they'll vote for life. We'll have better civic engagement, we'll have better electoral turnout, and ultimately we'll have government that's more representative of all the views of the population. I think it is, and I think if you look within the Fine Gael party in this calendar year alone, we've seen our membership figures go up in every constituency in the country. We've seen our party raise more funds this year than any time in the last decade, and each of the governments that Fine Gael have been a part of over the last terms, we had a very good coalition in very difficult times with the Labour Party. We led a minority coalition for over 4 years that everyone said would fall after a number of weeks with independence, and now we have a coalition, a groundbreaking coalition for those of us who enjoy our Irish history, between Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil and the Greens, with outside support from the independents. A government that today elected a Taoiseach with a majority of over 25 in the Dáil. I absolutely fully expect that our party will continue to grow, modernise and develop, and I really look forward to the next general election in due course, being part of the team that seeks another Fine Gael term in government. I think it has to be the management of the pandemic. I think the way we addressed very real public health concern, the way we maintained our economy, we were one of the few EU economies that kept up our exports, and that we were able to get out of the emergency stage in such a good condition, the way that people rallied round, I think that has been a huge success, and we now have an economic foundation that we can use to really kick on and address the challenges in terms of housing, healthcare, and simply putting more money back into people's pockets. We started to get to know each other about the early 2000s when we were members of Young Fine Gael. I was a new member of Young Fine Gael. Leo had just been co-opted onto Fine Gael County Council, then elected with over 4,000 votes or something ridiculous in 2004, and then obviously became a TD in 2007.
Has he changed much since then, or is he the same old Leo?
In many ways he is the exact same person then, but in other ways, like all of us, he's become a little bit more laid back in certain things, a bit more, relaxed in I suppose dealing with very difficult issues. He's matured, and that's the nature of life, but he's certainly at the essence and the core still the extremely decent person that I first met nearly 20 years ago. Climate action is key to everyone. Not just young people, it's people of my age and people of older. It is vitally important that we do everything we can, but it must be remembered that it was Fine Gael in a minority government with independence that brought in the first climate action plan in 2019. I'm really glad we're in government with the Greens. I think they're a good voice, and they absolutely help us kick on to ensure that we can address that. We've great challenges, but I think we've definitely put the structures in place to address those, and I know more will be delivered on that front, and I'm very glad Fine Gael are front and centre and in the middle of that. I have a number of friends in Sinn Féin. I don't have any enemies in Sinn Féin. I simply disagree with their politics immensely. They are a hard left, Eurosceptic populist party that I believe, if they were into government, would cause massive damage to our economy and society. I've no interest in getting caught up in discussions of the issues that dominated my youth and the paramilitary organisation that Sinn Féin represented for so long. I'm talking about their policies at the moment that would absolutely bankrupt the country, and I really fear that they're leading people down the primrose path and promising everything with solutions that are ill thought out and won't deliver anything. But I think it's really, really important in Irish politics. We don't have that level of personal animosity that we might see in the UK or the US or indeed the continent. And whilst we may go toe to toe in the Dáil chamber, a committee room or in a TV studio, we are all capable of having a cup of tea or maybe even a pint of beer together at the end of the day. Fine Gael is very much part of the political centre, the progressive centre. We have been pioneers of social change in this country long before a recent referenda back into the 1980s and Gareth Fitzgerald's constitutional crusade. But I think contemporary we have a sensible economic plan, and we sit very comfortably in the bloc in the European Parliament of the European People's Party, the moderate centre-right European Christian Democratic grouping. Well, certainly I think anyone who joins a political party decides to make sacrifices. You agree with maybe 70 to 75% of a party's platform. otherwise you'd be an independent, but as an independent you don't really get much done. You get things done as a political party. And the Fine Gael party, there are certain issues that I wouldn't necessarily say that I fundamentally disagree, but I'd like maybe perhaps more ambitious targets when it comes to things like climate, or indeed a more realistic approach to minimising the tax burden on so many people. But I fundamentally believe that Fine Gael is the political party that I chose to join, with no family connections, quite a bit 20 years and 2 months ago to this day in UCD, and I'm very much happy to be a member of that party and to stay in it. And the one thing I have to say that I'm most proud of is that we have consistently put the state first, and it's very important when we are celebrating the centenary of the creation of that state. We have to put everything in context. When Fine Gael came into government in 2011, we had 15% unemployment. We were in the middle of an international bailout. In that time, we faced Brexit, we faced a global pandemic, the likes of which there hasn't been seen in a century, and indeed we've seen a war in Ukraine, a war on European soil that is compared to nothing since World War II. We have made huge progress. We have built the foundations and secured the state in the face of huge difficulty, where other neighbouring countries have gone into absolute crisis. I think we're in an extremely strong position, and I think the Ireland that elected Fine Gael in 2011 was a much worse place than the Ireland is of today. And I think absolutely those 11 years that we've been in government have been a good 11 years, and after 13 years, when we go to the people again, we'll be able to say this is what we've done. No one ever gets everything done, and any party who says they can solve all problems overnight is misleading people. But I think we will have a good body of work that people can reflect on, and I hope endorse once again. Have your voice heard loudly, get active. Your voice matters as much as everyone else, and if in doubt, get in touch with me on social media. If you don't agree with me, let's have a chat and work it out.